I believe in 2017, relatively new organization, and with the purpose of start supporting people who were experiencing a risk of or had recently experienced homelessness to get into work, stable work, and well, sort of decent work as well. So good quality work, which can help them to improve their situation and gain a degree of independence, um, which is something that's so. I mean, you're. It's interesting, right? Because I work in this, but I'm aware that you've had an experience of homelessness, which puts you in a place of knowing exactly what it's like to
Yeah.
be there.
And when I read about Beam, I was
Mm,
expecting the jobs to be like McDonald's and like very simple stuff. But as I looked into it, it's like these people are going for like doctors and
mm.
like some top end jobs.
You get a range. So we certainly started with looking at pretty much anything to see if it was viable, and we had criteria. So we wouldn't just go for anything because if you set someone up who is, for example, you raised the idea of doctors. That was, if I remember rightly, that was someone who was an immigrant who had experience as a doctor in their country, and so they needed us to help fund the exam to get them recognized here in the UK.
Yeah,
If it was someone who didn't have a day's experience studying medicine, we wouldn't be like, I know what you want. You want to go 5 years, go and become a doctor, because it's probably not that sensible for them to do that right
no.
now.
But
Um, hmm,
it is good that the thought is there though, that like they can do anything.
yeah, absolutely. We want to really put them on a track to improve from where they are now. And some people that can be, I mean, that doesn't necessarily have to be going for something really high level. For some of the people we work with, actually getting into even part-time work can significantly improve their finances in
And
in such an incredible way.
the way I found it is, it was so
Mm,
difficult to get a job while you're homeless because you don't have an address. So all these jobs are like, where can we send post or where can we send like pay slips? And it's like, I don't actually know because I don't live anywhere. But to
mm.
get a house, I need a job. But to get the job, I need a house.
Where were you living when you were homeless?
Outside like Burger King.
Outside Burger King. So if you were applying for a job, we'd literally be talking. They'd ask you for an address, and the fact was that
Yeah.
you were rough sleeping at the time. There
Yeah.
was literally nowhere you could send it.
No. And then like they moved me into a homeless shelter.
Mm.
So now I did have an address, but it was still like, yeah, I am still pretty much homeless here. I can't afford to education, work clothes. I can't do any of that.
I wonder, and I'm really curious. So when you were during this time from being outside to having a being in a shelter, what what was your sort of primary? What were your priorities during the day? What was in your mind, going through your mind more than anything else?
Um, like, where's my next meal coming from?
Mm,
Am I going to actually ever get out of this? Because it is
so
pretty dark. Like sitting there on the street, and no one's really going to give you money because they think, oh, you're going to be buying drugs with that, and you're not actually going to buy food. And that was the
mm.
main one that I had, like people coming up and being like, I would give you money, but you're just going to buy drugs with it. It's
So
like,
people would say that to you.
yeah,
They'd literally come up and wow. So they just had this image of you which was nothing to do with you, but they just decided that was the kind of person you must be.
yeah,
And so I mean that I mean like to add insult to injury, it's like to have to not only be in a situation which is so challenging and so as you say, like this feeling of am I going to get out of this? You've also got the world around you either perhaps not giving you anything and ignoring you, or on the other hand, you've got people coming up and just sort of really projecting this really negative image at you.
yeah. So then I moved into like the homeless shelter, unable to get work because I didn't have like work clothes,
Mm.
and then like I would smell because I haven't had a shower in 3 weeks. So it is difficult going from what, off the street to getting a job. So having the help there for people must be so good for them.
You get a lot of the people we work with, they don't, I guess I'm not sure that they think about what will happen when donations start coming in. Maybe it's not on their mind so much, or maybe for some of them they're scared that they won't have any donations, no one will give to their campaign. But it's almost always such a huge moment when they have this experience of, looking at their campaign after a couple of days, and there's already money there. People have already been donating. There are these messages that they've left, really positive messages about, people really wanting them to take this positive step, which is the opposite of what you were getting when you were sat in doorways. It's literally the opposite message from the world. I think that is really important.
Having the nice messages, and it's like, oh, people do actually care about me as a person. It's outside of that stigma of people can actually now give money, and it's not going to go on drugs or anything bad. It's going to go on to them getting themselves bigger and better.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that trust from both sides that this is all of this is being invested in a positive future.
Yeah.
Which is huge. I'm curious, what was it that did it for you, John, that helped you? What have been the most important things in your journey coming from that?
I live in a YMCA now.
Hmm.
So they had people go into like the homeless shelter and see who was applicable to come in here. And then they kind of speak with you, and because I wasn't doing too well with my mental health, so they helped me with that. To a point where now, like, I have my own kitchen, bathroom, so it feels like mine now, instead of sleeping in a doorway.
You've got things which are, there's some stability of stuff which is like, is it your room now? You have actually a room, and it's actually a space that's yours rather than it being a public space.
Yeah. If I need that help, I can go downstairs and they'll speak with me.
Okay, so it sounds like that's been a really positive.
Yeah, and there's a lot more structure as well now. Which is something you don't really have when you're homeless. You just wake up and you're like, well, what am I going to do now? Because you don't have work, you don't have school.
Relationships of some sort? I don't know. There could be other people you might know. I honestly don't know.
I spent a lot of time at bookies. Because it's somewhere warm.
Yeah, that makes sense. So bookies would be warm. You're right. There's no structure. What do you do when you wake up and there isn't much to do? There's that sort of, again, will I get out of this? There isn't any kind of impetus or impulse to improve things and to progress.
But with people with Beam, like, they can look at the campaign and be like, okay, we're halfway there now. I'm nearly at their job or their education that they're trying to fund.
It gives them a sense. It's almost like they're able to imagine a bit more the future, and they can see themselves moving through that campaign page. They see themselves moving towards it.
Yeah.
And ours is we like, I'd say structure is something very important that we offer people, is that, I always try and it's something I always try and do with the people I'm supporting is really be very clear about the steps and the stages, and okay, we're right here, the next part is this, and then we'll do this. And I always think that having that sense of structure has been important, and offering them what's going to happen before the job search, what's going to happen when the campaign launches, what date are the training going to be. It's like putting these things in dates, putting these things practically. Yeah. From what you said, I've always had a bit of an intuition that was important, but from what you've said, I can see why it might be really important.
Yeah, because you can look at it and be like, okay, this is the first step of many, but once I've done that, then I can do this, and that is the end goal.
Yeah, So it's sort of a real pointed focus, and you've got a team behind you of people who are, my focus in Beam is to create the campaigns. So that's everything from checking someone is suitable right now and now's the right time to go into work, to seeing what their budget could look like if they went into this sort of work. Is it going to improve to the point that they would be very much better off? And then finally to kind of crafting and designing the campaign with them, writing the story, just helping them put it all together, what's finalizing the budget and everything. And then they leave me at that point, not permanently. I'm there if I still come in sometimes and can be there to support. But my main piece of work's done on the day that campaign launches, and then that's the funding side of things. And at that point, they'd go over and they'd work with our jobs team, Beam Recruits, or they'd work with our housing team, Beam Lettings, to whether they're looking for one or the other or both. And again, the structure remains that they've got someone who's really supporting them and leading that part of the journey with them.
Yeah, so it's not just like you leave them, you set up the campaign and they just leave them. Because
No.
doing that would be kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Because you just give them this money and then you're like, okay, see ya. And then they'd be like, well, what do I do now?
It'd be quite irresponsible.
And if they have any questions, they can come back to you and say, okay, I need help with this. Can you help?
Yeah, you're right, exactly. So I literally I will put through everything to purchase them an Oyster card, to get them a laptop, make sure it's the right address, to book them onto training, to make sure the dates are right for them. They know which dates they got to be there. Like we'll be very much step by step with them, making sure that everything works on that end. And then, with the jobs team, then it comes down to job applications, which is, I don't know, you'll have an experience this, John, right? In job applications, it can be hard work.
Well, yes. The amount you have to send off to even get a response.
Yeah, this can be, so having someone there actually can be a really important, I get the sense that it's very important to have that sort of support.
Yeah.
If you sent off a lot of them and you're still waiting to hear one back, it can be demotivating.
Yeah. When they first come to you, are they living in a doorway or do they come to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. We get people from really a lot of different situations. So some of the people, they rarely come directly to us, although some of them they can refer themselves to the service. I don't know what the percentages will be on that, but we do get a fair few who self-refer. The rest are referred to us by mostly local authorities. So we work with a group of, I think at the moment it's 7 local authorities, and each local authority will have its housing team. And people will come into the local authority who have become homeless or at risk, and they'll say, this is my situation. And part of what the local authority might then do is refer them over to us for employment and or housing support, depending on which one it is. We've got slightly different agreements with different local authorities. We do slightly different work with them. But for example, Greenwich is the one I'm the best acquainted with. I worked a lot back pre-lockdown days, which I'm not sure anyone can remember now.
Yeah.
But back in the days, I used to work in most of my time at the Woolwich Centre, which is where their housing officers are. And so I'd be working directly with the Greenwich staff. They'd be sending me people. I'd be meeting them downstairs. And yeah, that's where a lot of them come. That's when they come to us maybe. But the situation could be that they are homeless, living on the streets. Could be that they're in temporary accommodation. Could be they're in a hostel. Like I've worked with people who are in YMCAs before.
Yeah.
It's could be they're very badly in arrears and they've had an eviction notice and they really need some support with employment so they can improve their finances, that kind of thing. So it's quite diverse.
Yeah, which is good that you've got a mix of many scenarios.
Absolutely.
Because I know a lot of charities were like, no, this is our one thing. We're not going to step outside of that. But it's nice to see a charity that works with many scenarios and many people.
You'll find people in all kinds of situations, and they'll all have. what I will know, and my colleagues who work in the same role will know, is that every person has a very, very unique story about what's happened and what has led to this situation coming about. And I've heard quite a few of those stories now, and it's amazing the diversity of them, and it is amazing that we're able to support. Each one requires it, like two people living in the same situation will require very different levels of support and different types of support. Like, it always depends on the individual and what is it they need right now, and are we the service that could be useful?
Yeah.
Sometimes we're not. It's not always the case, but if we are, then phenomenal. Then phenomenal. It is great. We work in a very much a partnership style, you could say. So we work with people in one. We're very much teamwork when I do stuff with people. So it's sort of a shared project, which is nice. It's not.
Yeah.
I much prefer to give people I work with. It's people we work with. It's very much they have choice. They're very much leading their own journey with us. I'm just facilitating it and using the technology that we have to make sure it goes in the right direction, make sure it's successful.
Yeah, because you don't want to be giving someone something that they don't want or forcing them to do something. You want to be like, okay, is this right for you? If not, maybe we can go down this route.
Have you had that experience before? Have you had something where people have been trying to offer you support that hasn't been useful? It's not been what you needed.
Yeah, with like my mental health, it's like they either go too far and they think I'm going to do something drastic, and it's like, no, I just can't get out of bed. And they don't seem to understand that. So they're very much trying to cram something down my throat, and it's like, nah, I don't want that anymore.
Which isn't giving you a choice.
No, I would like
You-
the choice of like, okay, this is the support that we offer. What do you want to do?
Mm.
And then I choose what I want.
Yes, and that's. I mean, we're a very practical service. We're incredibly practical in the way we work, but I would say there's a philosophy behind it as well, that people making their own choices, that people tend to be able to choose the things which are going to work, and if they don't, then it's probably not going to work.
No.
Like, my idea of what's best for someone is not best for that person.
Yeah.
I don't know what's best for another person. I've got no idea. I'm curious what brought you, like you said, at one point, your mental health was to the point where it's like, I don't really want to get out of bed. What gave you the energy? What brought you back and got you getting up and brought back that structure?
Been able to like help people. So now that I'm doing my YouTube, I can make videos. I can get up and be like, okay, today I'm doing a video, film it, edit it, and then put it out. And then look at the comments, and it's like so many nice comments. It's like, oh, that's nice. Okay, why don't I actually use it to help people? So I'll start interviewing people that work with charities.
It's an amazing thing to be doing. Was there a moment? I mean, you mentioned you're walking down the street and you saw some people who were homeless. Was that the moment, or was there another moment where this idea just came to you?
It's because where I live, there's some homeless people that are actually homeless, and then there's some that are definitely exploiting it,
Mm.
where they have like iPhones, and you can see them getting into like Mercedes, and it's like, you shouldn't be owning a Mercedes if you're out there like begging.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, like if you can afford a Mercedes, surely Mercedes aren't cheap.
They're definitely not. I do not have one. I'm
Me
not
neither.
sure I will be getting one either at any point in the future. Definitely not cheap. So you sort of acknowledged that there were these people who were genuinely homeless and they were in need of some support.
Yeah, but it was difficult to, from the outside, it's difficult to see, are they exploiting it or not? Can I give them money? Or am I just
Interesting.
like funding something that's fake?
Curious, no, because same thing that people were talking to you about when you were actually
Yeah,
living homeless. People weren't sure whether to give you money or not because they had this curiosity. If I get, are you exploiting something? are you using this badly, or am I actually giving to you a positive future?
Yeah, so it is kind of nice seeing it from both sides. What it's like is like the person giving money and the person receiving.
So you've been on, and you're now standing on the other side of that. And how would you describe it now that you've actually had this experience? What when you see someone who's in a situation that you were in the past, what I imagine that's quite impactful when you even just to see people in that situation now.
Yeah, because I can now go up to them and not speak to them. And there have even been days when I'll just sit there with them for like 2 hours just talking to them about how they got into the situation. Do they need food? I've even brought them up here and just cooked them a meal and then just play FIFA with them because that's what they wanted to do. So
On a really personal level, you've actually been supporting people who are in that situation, and then at some point you thought, well, there are other people doing this.
yeah,
Could I use this YouTube channel I've created to do something with them?
yeah,
Sounds like you've had quite an extraordinary journey of it.
yeah. At 22, there's
20 years old.
yeah. I've gone through a lot, but coming out the other side, it's nice because now I can be like, okay, this is how I can help people.
So you've gone through it, and it was awful, I imagine, as it went through. But now
Yeah,
you're out the other side. You've actually come out in many ways stronger and more able to help others.
yeah, because I definitely wouldn't have thought of this beforehand. Like living with my parents, there's no chance I would have been able to help people that are homeless. I would have just been like, oh, he's exploiting me. Whereas now I
I
can be like, okay, maybe he's not.
Maybe he's not
Yeah, like a
as
Big Mac isn't gonna be too bad for him or her.
for sure. I'm really aware that with that experience, you've got, I guess from what I've said, you've probably got an idea now of, we have these sort of parts that I will work at the start and help someone to sort of plan together what they need funding, what's the job that they're looking towards, and what training do they need if they need it,
Yeah,
all these questions. And then when I've launched the campaign, they'll go on to the jobs team or the lettings team for, that's roughly we call it the member journey. The people we work with are members, they're team members. It's the word we use. That's sort of how we've worked, and I've been working for Beam almost for a year now. I would be really curious to just like pick your brains on just what you think is the most useful when you were in these situations, and when you were even at your lowest points. What was it that someone else could do? We've already identified sort of choice, and offering choice of services,
yeah.
choice of support has been really a pillar, which I think we do very well. I wondered if there was anything else you thought was just really fundamental that would have helped you, and maybe it was something you got or something you didn't get, but looking back, that would have been really helpful that we could start thinking about.
Like when you're sitting there homeless with
Hmm.
nothing to do, like just people talking to you about just ordinary things, the weather, sports. So I had quite a few people with like, because I wear a Chelsea shirt quite often. A couple of
Hmm.
them would come up and be like, "Oh, the football's bad, wasn't it? Or the football's good, or what do you think on this signing?" And it was like, oh, people are talking to me about something that I care about. So
Yeah.
just that human interaction really, instead of walking past. Because a lot of people, they'll sit there and be like, "Do you have any change?" And everyone will just ignore them. And it gets so demoralising sitting there when all you're really trying to pay for is a Big Mac. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, you're there just trying to look for food and everyone's just ignoring you.
And no one's giving you that kind of just very humanizing, just like no one's just speaking to you about stuff which you care about, which you're interested in.
Yeah,
How was the football, the weather like? Yeah. I guess you didn't. in that situation, you don't get to have many of those conversations, which are just so normal and so human.
Yeah. Because now, like, I'm pretty sure I could go to anyone in the streets that's just walking about and start talking to them. But because you're sitting there with a blanket around you, they're not going to talk to you. Just because they're sitting, they're no different to me. So why are people more able to speak to me when I'm walking about than they are when they're sitting there? They're more in need of help than I am.
It's this, and we mentioned it earlier, the stigma.
Yeah.
In this situation, and I mean, it sounds like part of what you're doing now is working to reduce that stigma and start to bring more perspective and more humanity to people in this situation.
Even if it's a few people that now watch this video and are like, okay, I'm going to speak to someone. I've impacted 1 or 2 people, which is more than I thought a couple of years ago.
What did you think a couple of years ago?
That I wasn't really going to do. I wasn't going to impact anyone. I was just going to kind of fade out.
Was that when you were actually on the streets a couple of years ago? So about 20? Or about...
Well, I was like 17, 18.
Okay, so this was 17, 18. And how long was this period of time where you were actually on the streets?
A year.
All right, and then so about when you hit about 18 or somewhere between 18 and 19, you got into hostel.
Yeah.
And then at some point you went on to that YMCA, or was the YMCA the hostel you went into?
I was in the hostel for like 2-3 weeks. Because they saw me as vulnerable, they just fast-tracked me into it.
Right.
Because I get very anxious about things, so they were like, yeah, we'll just move him into the YMCA.
Got you. And that's where you've been now for a few years?
Yeah.
Wow. So you've been in this place now for a few years, and so you're well past and into a place of quite, you've had some stability behind you. What do you see for yourself in the next few years?
I'm going to try and learn to drive and get past my mental health to a point where I can hold down a job for long enough. Because at the moment, like, I can work for Tesco's, but I need days off with like 48 hours notice. And Tesco's are just like, nah, it's not good enough. I'm going to sack you.
Sure. So there isn't an employer you found who would give you that time that you need for your own mental health. So your idea is, well, your plan right now is I need to get to the point where my mental health is strong enough to go and work.
Yeah, so I'm now working with a lot of friends who kind of understand that I might need a day off. But I work 7 days a week until I need a day off. I have a day off.
Okay. What do you do 7 days a week?
I just help a lot of friends. So one of them delivers parcels, one of them does gardening. Whenever they need me, they call me.
Got it. So you're an extra pair of hands who's there support with these kinds of tasks.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next, and you're putting a lot of time into this as well, into creating content as well to raise awareness about which different things. I think I saw a lot of football.
Yeah, I do quite a lot of football. Because I'm on Twitter quite a lot and they're interested in football.
Amazing. Well, it is an amazing, like, I'm really impressed by where you've come to. I think it's amazing that you were just a few years ago, you were sleeping, what do you say, Burger King doorway, and now you're at a place where you're stable enough to be working with friends, you're creative, you're literally creating content as well.
Yeah.
And you're also starting to see how you can help others. And you've come onto that and see what even little bits of difference you can make.
Yeah. Having a home surely is like a necessity. Surely. A lot more needs to be done from like a government level about the amount of people. Because you can go into London and every street you walk down, there's at least one homeless person at the end of it.
Yeah, it's astounding in London. The rates of homelessness are very, and I imagine this. I don't know this for truth, but I imagine they'll get worse, given the crisis and the aftermath, the economic downturn. But already pre-COVID, we still had so many people who were living on the streets of the city.
Yeah. And London as a whole is quite a rich area. Because you've got
Yes.
like Buckinghamshire and Chelsea and Fulham, and because I go to Chelsea quite a lot, and even there are millionaires on these roads, and yet there's still homeless people.
Yeah, you can end up with the image of a tremendously expensive house and sitting within walking distance, perhaps where you can see both aligned, will be someone who is currently begging on the streets, and those will both exist in the same area. And I agree, it's something I believe that pretty much everyone, to some degree or another, feels very uncomfortable about.
Yeah.
Like I think there are probably in London few causes that people have such a feeling of discomfort and a feeling that this is not right as homelessness.
And I think that could be why people walk past, because they're just uncomfortable with that situation, so they just scurry on past.
Yeah, it might be. It might be that I'm sure that plays a part that I mean I can speak from personal experience that if I have in the past definitely walked past thinking I can't do anything. I feel powerless. There's no change here. I can't, like, it's so awful and it's so bad that it's beyond what I can do. Whereas what you're speaking to and what you've spoken about is to something very small, not even in the giving of change, which could be very useful, but it could just be in the giving of time, space, just a very short conversation about something. It's not even that important in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
It's how someone is, which is, yeah, a lot of people feel, I imagine that discomfort and just ignore instead and ignore it all. And I don't judge those people. I've got no criticism about it, but I think that we all of us do it to a degree. I'd say all, like, majority of people, maybe not all,
Yeah.
do it to a degree.
When really we could all just go to Greg's, get a sausage roll, and be like, there you go, have breakfast.
That would be, and yes, and if we were to do that just now and then,
Yeah.
we'd be together having a tremendous impact, both in helping very basic needs and also just giving to people who are currently in that state of need. Yeah. And yet we don't, and it's not the common response.
No.
I guess as well, I mean, we're also talking about something which is entrenched. Not
Yeah.
every person, not every person, some people it's very temporary, but at least for passers-by, it won't be the person they look at. It will be they'll, as you said, you look at every street corner in London, you might see someone who's homeless. We're not talking about the individual because that might not be the same. That probably isn't the same person you saw last week. That
Mm.
person might now be in a hostel, but the actual fact of homelessness is very visible. And so it's kind of it, even though the people change so much, the sense that it's everywhere feels very permanent and unchanging and unchangeable. And I wonder if that's where some of that sort of powerlessness of just everywhere. How can I deal with anything of this? It's just so much.
Mm.
Hmm. It is hard. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Beam is probably one of the most intelligent responses to this because it isn't something that you can solve. Even I would even be, I'd be very, at least skeptical to a degree about just simply throwing money at the problem. As you said, if Beam just sort of raised the funds and then just gave the money, that wouldn't we wouldn't quite be being responsible for trying to solve this as an
Mm.
issue. It does require I think, a really effective, and we are very results driven, which I think is really necessary to be really focused on what is the next step you want here. What would better than now look like, and how would we get there? Who would we talk to? What training would we need? That, like, really the practical ins and outs. What data are we going to start job searching?
Yeah.
When are we going to do your CV? Like, these questions are, and then to create a structure and to have this sort of trajectory, which is all kind of supported. And yeah, I think it requires this kind of a response for us to have a real meaningful impact on. Otherwise, you just choke money on it. I'm not, you can have good results in the short term, which might end up nowhere. Looking for long-term change.
If I were to give money, can I choose who it goes to? So if I see someone on that website, can I?
You can do one of two things. So, well, there may be more now, but you can do one of two things I'm aware of, because they're the things I do. You can either give to a specific campaign. You can go onto someone's campaign if you go to the main page of Beam, beam.org, main page will have the campaigns on it that are currently funding. So those are the ones that are still, they're still every stake of 0 to 99% of the way there to the budget goal. You can click through them and you can choose one that really resonates with you, that you think, yeah, this is the person I want to give to, and then you can give a one-off donation to that. Alternatively, other people will give monthly, and then each month they will get an email which tells them, this is this person, you funded her, your £10 this month went to her, she's training to be this, you can go on a campaign here. And so then it's, I guess, more, it's randomized, but you still get you still find out about them, and then anyone that you fund, you'll also then be updated about. So what happens next? When have they started job hunting? When have they entered work, or what's happened with their campaign? So we're always very transparent. It's a really important.
I didn't know that last bit.
Yeah.
I didn't know you got like an email about what they were doing next. I just thought like you gave a tenner and then you have given to this person.
Well, the thinking behind it, which I think is really important, is that with a lot of charity models, what you'll find is that you might give on a subscription basis, but maybe you might hear on a broad scale the impact of that organization, but you won't know exactly what happened to your £10. Whereas like if you go to a campaign on Beam, you'll see the budget broken down into each element: laptop 300, travel for the first month of work 150, forklift training, just off the top of my head from someone I was working with last week, £1,080. So you give £10, you know that £10 has gone to one of these very specific budget items. And then when it's funded and they've gone forward, any updates they do. So we will do updates with the people we work with, where anything major happens. Could be the classic would be someone gets into work. We'll do an update. We'll share an update, which I or another member of the team will speak to them, and we'll find out a little bit about what's happening, what's it like, and that update will then go to everyone who supported them. So it's the idea is that we want people to know where their money's gone. We want to be really transparent about it, and it's something I think is really essential, that sort of transparency of, you can see the impact that you've had.
Yeah, because it is nice to be like, okay, this is exactly where it's gone. This is what's happened now, and now they're in work. And you feel very much as part of the process. Yes,
you are a part, and your money has been, yours and the other people, everyone else's money. This is the reason we've been able to do this. Like, you were a fundamental part of actually helping this person into work, and you were part of their journey. And yeah, it's the opposite of the problem you have when someone might, the problem you were talking about is if you're looking with someone who's actually rough sleeping, do I give them money? Well, the question you'll find people ask is, well, where would it go? The fundamental question is, by giving this person money, am I doing good? Am I doing good for them? Or am I actually, the sort of the angle with the stigma that people go down is, am I actually causing more harm by giving money? Which is what we're often told and what we often see. It's like, oh, I'm funding drugs trade and funding all sorts of negative things, so I won't give anything. So it's that sort of unknown and that unknowableness of where does my money go. Part of what Beam does is it stops that. It actually says, here's where your money's gone. You've knocked off, you've funded 25% of this laptop they need to job search. And now they've got to work using the laptop that you quarter funded, and that you were literally, without your 20%, 5%, this person wasn't going to be able to look for a job, they typed on the laptop to apply for the job they got through the laptop you funded for them. Like, you are inherently an important part of the process when you give money to Beam, and I think that's really important for people to know and for people to be aware of just the impact they're having and how important it is. What do you think about it? How does that sound to you like it's a useful component?
Yeah, from someone that is going to give money, you do want to know exactly where it's gone, instead of, there you go, there's £10, and then you're kind of like,
Yeah.
have I bought McDonald's? Is that going on like a blanket? Is it going on drugs? Like, what am I giving to you?
Yeah.
So then you usually go, no, I'm not actually going to give you money. Whereas instead you're like, okay, I'm giving £10 towards that laptop that you're going to get the job, or I'm paying £10 towards your forklift training so that you can work in a warehouse.
That's the idea, I guess. I mean, I'm pretty sure people will normally go towards, if they're just left in the unknown, they'll probably, it must be a cliche, right? People expect the worst.
Yeah.
So they'll naturally go towards the kind of the risk averse. Don't want to give you money. You gonna buy drugs with it? It's like they'll go towards the stigma, and that's where they'll go. But what we'll do is we'll offer them very much certainty. Here's where your money's going. We purchase everything. So I'm the person who will purchase everything here. I can guarantee you this is what the money will be spent on. And that's really important, giving people that trust and being transparent. And it's transparent with the member who knows what they're going to get, transparent with the supporter who knows what they're actually funding. It's like, that's part of the platform. Fundamentally, it's about honesty. It's just like, you can trust that all of this is what's happening, and that everyone knows what's going to happen with this campaign.
So you said that you buy everything. You said that you had a letting, the housing.
Oh, yeah. So right now, this is something we've been trialing, because I mean, what you've said it yourself, having a home is essential. It's such an inherent human need these days, to have somewhere to live, somewhere that you can call your home. And obviously we spent most of our time since we were founded, since Alex, our founder, began this. It was pretty much work was the main thing, but maybe it probably started about a year ago. We started having thoughts about this. Homelessness, typically what we want to do is we want to help someone to become independent. Part of that obviously involves having a home.
Yeah.
Work, we always started from the perspective of work, because having a home and no income,
You're just going to be back on the street again.
Exactly. We're looking for long-term stability and independence. Fundamentally, we always want someone to be better off and able to sustain themselves. Independence is what we want them to have, not to be sort of shakily reliant on something which falls through. So work was obviously the first place we went to. If they're able to earn their own money, then they can when they have enough, they can actually go into their own private property and XYZ. But we realized that we could probably also, we started to sort of explore, well, could we also enter the lettings side of things? Could we also look into offering people support into housing? And yeah, it turns out we can. We've been doing it very successfully now for a few months. I wish I had the numbers on me, but we've only, I mean, when I say a few months, it started, one of the first 3 people we worked with was someone I worked with. It was, she's on the website. So it's a young woman called Soraya. Soraya had a 1.5-year-old son, and she was working as a cleaner. Now, problem was, Soraya had been moved because she didn't have accommodation she has, as I said, everyone has their own story. She has her own story. It's led to her being put in temporary accommodation by the local council. They've sent her, because of their own needs, right? They don't have lots of temporary accommodation access in the local area. So they've had to send her to a different council somewhere else, which means that she's not able to do her job anymore. Okay. This is a huge, so she's had to lose the job. She's had to become reliant on benefits. and she's so far away from everyone she knows. So she's really lost independence, unfortunately, through this. It's like, well, we realized that what Soraya needed more than anything, the job was happy to have her back. If she was in the area, they wanted her to come back and continue working with them.
Yeah.
We worked out that the only thing really missing for Soraya was deposit first month's rent and someone helping her into a property in her local authority. Like, if we could do that, she could go back to work. And we're very rigorous, particularly with housing, because you have to be very rigorous about making sure things are affordable. We do kind of I do a lot of, you could call them like, we look at different circumstances. Okay, so let's see what would happen if you weren't in work. Would you be able to afford the housing? What happens if you were in work 16 hours? Would you be able to afford the housing? Like, we look at different scenarios to make sure this is affordable, even in the worst case scenario.
So if you were on a 0-hour contract, the housing is still possible.
Yeah, or even worse, if you were unemployed, you were just on benefits, is this housing possible? We want to make sure that, life can throw things at you. Could be that after a few months, this job goes under. Is she still able to maintain the housing whilst we support her back into work, for example? Might be what happens. And yeah, we worked out quite simply that if we got over the barrier of the deposit first month's rent, which is so huge, it's such a huge amount of money, and we then helped her by talking to landlords, finding a property that would work, well, she'd be able to go back to her work, which was enough hours in the week. We worked out that she could actually, through a combination of her universal credit and the hours from cleaning, that she could afford quite comfortably. This would actually solve the problem. She'd be in such a better situation, and she'd have the security of having a year-long tenancy as well, which she'd hopefully be able to renew at the end. So yeah, that's what we did. We raised the funds. It raised very quickly. This was during COVID time, so cleaners were very much in demand. Cleaning our services is super important these days. And yeah, we helped her into a property. We found her a place within 2 or 3 weeks. She moved in from the moment she launched. It took her, I think, 3 weeks by the time she'd actually got a place and contract signed. And she went back in within a week or two of getting back in. She'd gone back to her old job. And now she's she's no longer homeless, and she's actually got the recourses where she can maintain this property. The one thing we've got to think about, we always want to be thinking about this thing, is in a year's time, is that if the landlord decides they don't want to renew it, will she be able to support herself into another property? And that's something we'd ask then as well. We'd want to make sure that we'd want to check on her to make sure, is she able to be completely independent? Is there any support we could still offer to make sure that she's able to maintain this? But for the most part now, we're light touch. I mean, it's one of the few times I can say that I thankfully haven't been in touch with Soraya. Not because I don't want to. She's an amazing person. I love to speak to her. But because she doesn't have issues she needs to bring to me. She is independent. She does not need my support.
But if she did, she could come to you and say, here's an issue.
There's no surefire thing that especially after someone's gone through the Beam journey, we don't close our doors forever. And if someone comes back in a crisis, we can talk to them. It's always going to be individual, because we try and be very personalized. The whole point of the service with each person's campaign, it's really personalized to their needs. So if she came back to me with an issue, I'd absolutely pick up the phone and have a conversation with her. And I'd then work out, is this something that we can help with? And if not, where could she go? I'd still talk to her. We're very prompt and signposting. I might say, this is not within the remit of Beam. This isn't something we even look at. However, we're aware of this organization who do really great work. Here's their number. Refer yourself to them and let me know. So if we can't help you with something, it's like we'll still do our very best to point you in the right direction. Obviously, we want to be careful with what we can really create the most impact on, and everything else, because there are so many issues present in for some of the people we work with. They might have so many things going on that we're only able to provide that one impetus of finance, job support, and that's the thing we can do. But there might need to be a mental health charity on the one hand if we're helping on that angle. There might need to be a food bank on the other hand, because right now they don't have an income that allows them to pay for everything. It's a coordinated approach to help this person step up and regain their independence, for sure.
That was going to be one of my next questions. Like, you work with other charities as well, if you're not right for them.
We
Do you
do.
point
We
them
do.
towards another charity or another organisation?
Often what happens is that other charities point people towards us.
Oh,
So other charities will, because we might not come across someone who is not yet at a space where they can work. So, for example, if someone was, really, their main issues were around food. Now's not the time to start thinking of a job where they're not going to get paid for a month.
hmm.
And if their main issues are around really mental health, and it's purely about building and growing in that and improving in that level, then maybe it's not the right, like for some people who come to us, we almost never say no permanently. Pretty 90 somewhere in the 95 to 99% of the time, the only answers we'll give are yes, let's carry on, let's do this, or not yet, because actually this looks like it's something that would be really useful for you to work on. And that's where other charities might come in. But normally it's they wouldn't be in touch with us unless they were getting to the point where job support was starting. They were at that level where that's the next thing that's going to improve themselves. They're not thinking about the next meal. They're thinking about an income that would provide a month's worth of meals.
Yeah.
It's a different priority level, which requires you to have some building blocks: stability of accommodation, stability of mental health, which is a really important one.
Hmm.
It's not, and by all means, I work with a lot of people who have anxiety, who have depression, who it's not, the question isn't if they have mental health issues. It's the question is if they able to manage them to the point where they could commit to doing work, which I think is the question you're talking about with yourself. That's the question you're sort of working with personally, which
Yeah.
is, I'm
Where am
aware,
I
of a
going
really big
next? What's the next
question.
step in building me?
That would be a really interesting. I know. I wonder. What do you think? What would be the next step in building in your building blocks?
Um, Probably moving out of here because I can't live in the YMCA forever. But like the deposit on a rent is stupid.
Yeah, it is. It is crazy high. The deposit on rent. So big reason, right? We're talking about these costs are costs which are so far away from most people's pockets, let alone if you're in a position where you have enough to live and to survive, but you're not going to put aside £1,200.
Hmm.
Or,
It is mind-boggling that people want like £1,200 when people are trying to build themselves off of homelessness. Like, how is someone actually going to do that when they can't afford just like a laptop?
This is it, and this is where we build. This is why we build stability. And building blocks are not the perfect metaphor, but they work well enough in just saying that blocks need to be met. At the bottom, it's not. It's been done before. I think it's called the hierarchy of needs, right? You've got kind of at the bottom floor. You've got, what do I need to live and survive today? It's going to be water and oxygen, and going upwards, you're going to find stability of accommodation, a home, enough food. That sort of box of accommodation and everything I need to eat and drink would be referred to, I think, as sort of the basic needs. If you don't have those, it's actually very hard, I would imagine, to think about work, because work is work requires that you're thinking long term. How can you think long term if you're hungry and you don't know where the next meal is going to come? You're not going to no, Long term is not going to be the top of your agenda.
No,
Obviously, getting £1,200 for a deposit is not going to be at the top of your agenda.
no.
Um, I'm sure you're going to be thinking about how am I going to get the money for, in your case, a Big Mac? Where am I going to get this however many pounds that I need just to go in here, buy myself some food?
Yeah,
We work with people who've got those building blocks often. I'm not saying they're perfect. I mean, my building blocks aren't perfect, but they're good. They're at least stable enough that you can build another block upon them. They're ready. They can actually hold another one on top. They've got some stability. So I am someone, good enough is what I look for, never perfect. It's only, can they just about put another block on? Can that block sit there? And that's the block that we're there to help them just balance. Kind of, for some reason, my mind's gone to Jenga, but that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
I'm aware we've covered a fair breadth of stuff in an hour, John. Just to check, have you've been recording it, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful. It would have been, had you not been, about, well, great conversation. We're going to have to come up with new topics if we do it next week again to get the recorded version. But amazing. I'd love to. What are you thinking in terms of next steps? You fancy, so you're going to be doing the editing and putting this out,
and then I'll put the links to all everything down below in the comments, so that people can give. And one will be much, but everything helps.
Well, it's what you said. Even if 2 people do, what an amazing thing! What an amazing thing for you to have done, to have brought that to 2 of the people that we're working with.
Yeah.
It'd be great to keep in touch, John. I want to know I'd love to know what sort of, that next building block that you're building.
Do you want me to send you this?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course.
So that
you
could make sure it's all right.
I will send it to me, and I'm sure I will have no issues with it whatsoever. I will. The reason I'd love for you to send it to me is so I can share it with the team.
Okay.
That's what I'd love to do, to send it around everyone, so everyone can see it, can see a little bit of our conversation. All right?
Yeah.
All right. Amazing, John. Take care of yourself. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to seeing the final product of this one.
Yeah.
All right, cool, John. See you.
See ya.